Hey guys, tonight we're stepping inside a candlelit castle chamber where the air smells faintly of rosewater and parchment. Silken curtains sway at the tall, narrow windows, and a fire crackles in the stone hearth. You're not just anyone in this world, you're a medieval princess. Your hair is brushed to a shine by handmaidens. Your hands are softened with lavender oil, and the weight of 1,000 expectations rests on your delicate shoulders. You probably won't survive this kind of life. It's not all tiaras and tea parties. The corsets are tight, the politics are tighter, and your schedule is packed from sunrise to sundown, with more rituals than rest. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time down in the comments. It's always a joy to see where everyone is tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes open at dawn, not because you want to, but because a maid whispers your name with a reverent hush. She pulls back the heavy velvet curtains, letting the faint gray light of morning creep across your tapestried walls. The fire's been stoked while you slept, and a copper basin of warm water awaits at your bedside. Today is not a feast day, so the castle will remain relatively calm, but that doesn't mean you'll have time to rest. First comes the washing ritual. A lady-in-waiting helps you rise, and another hands you a linen cloth. You dip it into the basin, dabbing your face and neck with practiced elegance. Your chambermaid stands ready with rose-scented soap imported from distant lands and reserved only for nobility. Then comes the brushing of your hair. Every strand must be smooth and orderly as a symbol of your family's grace and control. Your dress for the day is chosen carefully. As a princess, every detail speaks volumes. The color of your gown, the richness of its embroidery, the sheen of the fabric, all must reflect your station without overshadowing the queen. You lift your arms as two attendants slide the silk down over your head, tugging and lacing with skilled fingers until everything fits snugly and properly. By the time you're fully dressed, you're cinched, perfumed, and polished like a living relic. Then comes breakfast, but not in your room. You walk gracefully, always gracefully, through the corridors to the family hall, where only your closest relatives are allowed. You must greet your mother, the queen, with a curtsy, and your father with a soft, "Good morning, your majesty." The food is modest trenchers of bread, honeycomb, soft cheese, and a weak ale or watered wine. It is not a time for indulgence. It is a time for presence. After breakfast, your morning lessons begin. Even as a royal daughter, your education is vital. You sit with a governess to recite your Latin prayers, translate a passage from a French romance, and practice writing an elegant flowing script on a wax tablet. Your hands are trained to be nimble, your mind to be sharp. By mid-morning, your tutor arrives for lessons in diplomacy. You rehearse the names of noble houses, discuss alliances, and learn to detect the subtleties of courtly flattery. One day, your marriage will not just be a union, it will be a strategy. And you must be prepared. Then comes music. A harp is brought into the chamber, and your fingers pluck at its strings, while your instructor watches with pursed lips. You may not be expected to become a master, but you must be able to entertain, to charm, to soothe. Afterward, you may sing a gentle ballad about distant forests or tragic nights. Your voice must carry sweetness, not strength. Just before noon, a seamstress arrives. She takes your measurements again, jots down notes, and asks you to review the patterns for a gown you'll wear to the midsummer banquet. You nod and smile, and pretend to care about the trim on the sleeves, though your mind is elsewhere on the letter your cousin slipped to you yesterday. or on the young knight you glimpsed in the training yard. But daydreams must wait. It's time for midday prayers. You and your ladies walk silently to the castle chapel, each step a quiet rhythm of ritual. You kneel on the cold stone, hands folded, reciting your lines as incense drifts through the air. Sometimes you whisper your own private hopes, less about salvation, more about freedom. Lunch is served in the same hall as breakfast, though now there is more variety: boiled eggs, stewed vegetables, a slab of roasted meat. Still, it is not about the food, it is about being seen. Every gesture, every glance is noted. You listen more than you speak, smiling politely, while your father discusses border disputes and your mother critiques a visiting duchess's wardrobe. By now, the castle is warming up, sunlight flooding through the stained glass windows. But you are still bound by schedule, still wrapped in brocade and duty. And the afternoon is only beginning. The dining hall slowly empties, but you don't get to linger. As soon as the last spoon clinks against a bowl, your lady-in-waiting gently taps your shoulder and whispers that it's time to change. You rise, offer one final nod to the queen, and slip away down the corridor skirts, brushing against cool stone floors. Back in your chamber, a different gown is waiting. This one is lighter, meant for movement, and dyed a soft hue of green, a symbol of peace and renewal. A few maids help you out of your lunch attire. The laces are undone, the sleeves slid down your arms, and the new dress is fastened around you with practiced ease. Even this moment is part of your role. You are not merely changing clothes, you are transforming from the princess at table to the princess on display. This is the part of the day where you're expected to be visible. Not in the way a performer is, but like a stained glass window, lovely, untouchable, always framed. You head to the gardens, escorted by a pair of chaperones and a handful of noble girls from neighboring courts. They trail behind like delicate birds, whispering and giggling, always watching you for cues. You are the highest ranking among them, and so they copy the way you fold your hands, the tilt of your head, when you listen, the soft murmur of your laughter. You walk slowly, pausing to admire the roses and the lilacs that bloom near the fountain. The gravel crunches softly beneath your slippers, and the breeze lifts your veil. You do not run or spin or skip, that would be improper. But you do breathe a little easier out here where the air isn't thick with incense or expectation. Sometimes you read aloud from a book of romances. The girls settle on benches or cushions laid across the grass, and you hold the small leather-bound volume in your gloved hands. You recite tales of knights and lost heirs and lovers cursed by cruel fates. You read beautifully because you've been trained to, and your voice glides like silk through the warm afternoon. Occasionally you glance up from the pages, pretending not to notice the castle guards, stationed a short distance away, pretending not to notice the falconer's apprentice watching you from beneath the archway. When you tire of reading, the conversation turns to embroidery. One girl has brought her hoop, a mess of threads tangled around a half-finished rose. You admire it and offer gentle suggestions, never criticism. Your own embroidery is more refined, of course, but it wouldn't be gracious to show it off. The topic shifts, as it always does, to marriage. You listen as the others speculate about which dukes and counts might be eligible, who might have wealth, who might be kind. One of the younger girls asks you directly if you're to be betrothed soon. You smile the way you were taught to and answer with something vague and sweet. Inside, your stomach turns. You already know that a letter arrived last week from the Northern Court. Your father hasn't mentioned it, but you heard your mother speaking in hushed tones to the steward. The name of a prince was whispered, one you've never met. You picture his face as you've been told, broad shoulders, sharp nose, proud eyes. You do not know his laugh. You do not know if he dreams, but you know he is Catholic, and his kingdom borders a land with valuable trade routes. Eventually, your group drifts back toward the castle. The sun is sliding west now, and you feel the weight of the day settling back over your shoulders. You're led not to your chamber, but to the solar, the family's private sitting room. The queen is already there, seated beneath a canopy of crimson silk, sipping from a goblet. You curtsy low before stepping forward. She invites you to sit, and the two of you speak. This, too, is part of your role. You ask about her health, about the latest tapestry being woven about the bishop's visit next week. She nods and answers, then turns the conversation toward your duties. There's a feast coming up. You'll be expected to dance, to host, to charm the Baroness from the west, the one with the difficult son. You nod, making mental notes. You do not complain. You do not fidget. You are a princess, and your ability to make everyone feel like they belong, even when you do not, will one day decide the fate of your future lands. After the solar, you're given an hour to write letters. Seated at a small desk near the window, you take up your quill and parchment. You write to your cousin in the south, telling her about the gardens, the gowns, the dullness of diplomacy. You choose your words carefully. Every letter can be read by the steward or intercepted by couriers. You slip in small jokes between the lines, just enough to remind her that beneath the lace and titles, you're still a girl with a mind of your own. Once the letters are sealed with wax and passed to your maid, you rise to stretch. The evening bells ring softly in the distance. There is a knock at your door. A message the steward asks that you attend the evening scripture reading in the chapel. You nod, adjusting your sleeves. Duty never waits, and the night is only just beginning. The stone halls are dimmer now, washed in the flickering amber of torchlight. Your footsteps echo softly as you make your way toward the chapel, escorted as always by a quiet, respectful attendant. The chapel door stands open, and you pause for a breath just outside. The cool air smells of beeswax and old wood. You straighten your posture, adjust your veil, and step inside. Candles burn along the altar, their flames bobbing gently in the breeze that leaks through ancient stained glass. The seats are already half-filled ladies' stewards, the Queen Mother, and a bishop visiting from a neighboring abbey. You lower yourself gracefully onto the wooden pew reserved for you and fold your hands in your lap. The bishop begins to read aloud from the Book of Hours. His voice is steady and slow, like water flowing over stones. It washes over you, the words as familiar as breath. You mouth them silently, not so much out of devotion, but because it's expected, because in this role, reverence is performance and prayer is politics. You glance sideways, occasionally checking your expression in case anyone is watching. By the end of the reading, your knees ache from kneeling on the stone floor, and your fingers are cold. You rise with the others, dip your fingers into holy water, and make the sign of the cross. Then you offer a small bow to the bishop, just low enough to be proper, and glide quietly back toward the corridor. Back in your chamber, your ladies are already waiting, ready to help you prepare for supper. You sit on a cushioned stool while your hair is brushed out again gently, so as not to tangle the carefully styled curls. A different dress is laid out, a deep blue velvet with gold trim. More formal, more regal. Your sleeves are fitted tight at the wrists, flaring out in elegant bells that will sway just so as you move through the banquet hall. A thin circlet is placed atop your head, not a crown, but enough to remind everyone that you are noble, highborn, untouchable. Jewelry is chosen, nothing too bold. A pendant of your family's crest, a pair of delicate earrings. You check your reflection in the polished silver mirror and see not a girl, but an icon. You smile barely, The great hall is lit brilliantly when you arrive. Hundreds of candles gleam from chandeliers above, casting gold over the long wooden tables and richly woven banners. You are announced by name and title. You walk slowly, deliberately, toward the high table where your parents already sit. Guests rise and bow as you pass. You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not slouch or yawn or scratch an itch. You smile and nod and say the right thing at the right time. A visiting lord compliments your embroidery. You thank him modestly. A countess inquires about your music. You demur that you're only learning. Everyone is watching. Every moment is theater. The meal is long. Course after course is served roasted quail pottage with barley sweet fruits preserved in honey. You take small bites, sip from your goblet, and keep your gaze soft and attentive. You listen as your father discusses border disputes, and as your mother quietly critiques a rival duchess's neckline. You nod as if you understand the weight behind every word. Across the hall, musicians play softly, lutes, viols, and the gentle thrum of a drum. Occasionally, a jester performs a brief trick near the hearth, or a storyteller recites a short fable to amuse the younger guests. You offer polite laughs and well-placed gasps of surprise. This is your life, a careful rhythm of ritual and presentation. At some point, a name is mentioned, a name you recognize. The Northern Prince. Your stomach tightens. You glance briefly at your mother, who does not look your way but slowly lifts her goblet. A silent signal. Discussions have moved forward. You know what that means. Soon you'll be summoned for a more serious conversation, likely in the solar. You'll be told what is expected when the prince might arrive, what virtues to highlight, what habits to correct. You'll be told to smile, to charm, to make him see you as a jewel worth claiming. But for now, you remain in your place, fingers curled gently around your cup lips, upturned eyes calm. As the banquet winds down, your father rises and signals the closing prayer. You stand hands folded. The hall falls quiet. A final Latin blessing is murmured into the candlelight. Then guests begin to file out, nodding their thanks, trailing velvet and perfume behind them. Your ladies gather quickly to escort you back to your chambers. The corridors are colder now. The air bites a little more sharply through the fabric of your sleeves. Once inside your room, the hearth is already lit, your nightgown laid out, your slippers placed beside the bed. The maids begin to undo your gown, unlace your bodice, remove your circlet. You are slowly, gently unwound from the day. Pins come out of your hair. Earrings are returned to their velvet case. You are rubbed down again with warm cloths and lavender oil, your skin kept soft for the image you must maintain. Finally, you slip into the linen shift and the woolen nightgown that follows. The bed is warmed with a pan of coals, and the coverlets are turned down. You slide beneath them with a sigh, your mind buzzing. Outside your window, the moon rises over the towers. Somewhere below, the guards are swapping stories beside the gate. The castle is still, but your thoughts are not. You stare at the canopy above your bed, wondering if the prince has your name written in a letter somewhere. Wondering what he looks like when he's alone. Wondering if he wants this any more than you do. But your eyes are heavy. And tomorrow it begins again. You wake before the sun fully rises, stirred not by the light, but by the soft creak of your chamber door and the muffled footsteps of your maid. She speaks in a whisper, as always, as if your sleep were too delicate to disturb harshly. My lady, it's time. You blink in the dimness, still half in dreams, and then sit up slowly, the cold air biting at your neck, where your braid has unraveled during the night. The morning ritual begins anew. A steaming basin is waiting, and your hands are warmed before they even touch the water. You wash with slow, practiced motions while the maid gently combs the tangles from your hair. The same brush, the same scent, the same quiet rhythm. There's comfort in the repetition, even if it sometimes feels like you're living the same day over and over. Today you've been told you'll be sitting for a painter. A new one sent by a noble family from the West, who wished to gift your portrait to their aging matriarch. She had once served as lady-in-waiting to your grandmother, and such gestures of loyalty must be acknowledged. You sigh softly. The sitting will take hours. You must remain perfectly still, and yet you must somehow appear graceful, almost ethereal. Your dress is chosen accordingly, pale blue damask embroidered with silver lilies. Your hair is styled into an elaborate coif, and a wimple is added for formality. A velvet cushion is placed just so on the window seat where you'll sit, and a servant dusts the corner of the room to ensure the light falls in the right places. It is an art, this presentation of nobility, an illusion carefully staged. The painter arrives a man of middle years, quiet, meticulous. He bows deeply before setting up his supplies. You take your seat and fold your hands in your lap. Then begins the stillness. Your eyes are to be open but soft. Your lips closed but not tense. Your body perfectly poised and yet not rigid. Time stretches strangely during a portrait sitting. The room is silent except for the occasional scratch of brush on canvas, the distant clink of goblets in the great hall, and the soft footfalls of servants passing through nearby corridors. You feel your back ache after just 20 minutes, but you do not shift. As the hours pass, your thoughts wander. You think of the garden from yesterday, of the falconer's apprentice, of how he had glanced at you, then quickly away. You wonder if he knows your name. You wonder what he dreams about at night. The painter eventually asks for a short break, and you are allowed to stretch your legs. You sip warm, spiced wine from a delicate goblet and let your feet dangle slightly off the edge of the cushioned bench. A maid fusses with your veil, readjusting it for the next round. When the sitting resumes, your gaze returns to the middle distance somewhere between the stone wall and the sky beyond the window. When it's finally over, you're exhausted in a strange way, not from labor, but from the effort of stillness, of grace, of holding an image together for so long. The painter thanks you and bows again, and your ladies bustle around you to help you change. There's barely time for a bite to eat before your next obligation, overseeing the preparations for the spring festival. Though you're not yet married, you're expected to practice the duties of ladyship, supervising, managing, smiling when appropriate. So you find yourself in the kitchens, a handkerchief pressed lightly to your nose to ward off the scent of onions and roasting fowl. The head cook greets you with deference but not fear. She's worked in this castle since before you could walk. You ask polite questions about the feast, the plum tarts, the fish stew, the honey cakes shaped like flowers. You pretend to care about the availability of cardamom, though you have no say in trade routes. You nod when she tells you that the sugar shipment has arrived early. You praise her wisdom when she says she'll store half of it to stretch through summer. From there, it's to the weavers. You're shown samples of new cloth linen dyed with madder root wool combed to softness. You select a bolt of fabric for the queen's new robe, though she'll ultimately approve or reject it herself. Then you inspect the decorations being prepared for the festival, woven garlands, painted shields, pennants in your family's colors. You're meant to offer suggestions, but mostly you offer presents. Then it's off to visit a convalescing servant, an older maid who once served your nursemaid's nursemaid. You bring her a basket of dried fruits and a bundle of rosemary. You hold her hand gently, smile kindly, say all the things expected of a noble young lady. She weeps softly at your kindness, and you wonder if she weeps more for the act or for the mask she knows you must wear. Later you return to your chamber and collapse onto the edge of the bed. For a moment, no one is watching. You remove your circlet and stare at your reflection in the polished basin of water. You almost don't recognize the girl looking back. But there is no time to linger in silence. Another maid knocks. The queen wishes to see you privately. You take a breath, replace the circlet, and rise. The court never sleeps, and neither, it seems, do its princesses. The queen's solar is dim when you enter, warmed only by the glow of a single hearth and the gentle clink of her goblet as she sips from it slowly. She doesn't look up at first. You wait at the threshold until she gestures for you to come closer. Her expression, when she does finally raise her eyes, is unreadable, a polished mask perfected over decades of courtly life. You've seen her smile through betrayals and sip wine after funerals. Tonight she looks almost thoughtful. She motions for you to sit. You do so, tucking your hands neatly into your lap. The velvet of the chair is worn at the arms, a quiet detail that reminds you how long she's held this post. How long you might have to. She speaks in that even, controlled voice she always uses. When the topic is weighty, the Northern Prince has officially responded. He'll arrive in a fortnight to meet the royal family. To meet you. There will be hunts, banquets, dances. You'll be seated beside him. You'll be watched by him, by everyone. This is the beginning of your usefulness, she says plainly. Her eyes soften just slightly. He's not unkind, she adds, as if that's a comfort. You nod. What else can you do? By the time you leave her chamber, the castle is quieter. Most servants have retired. The halls feel longer, the torches fewer. You walk slowly, your thoughts louder than your steps. The prince, the suitor, the stranger who may one day share your bed, your title, your future. You try to picture him again, this time older, sitting beside you on a throne or pacing before a fire while you embroider something meaningless just to appear occupied. You wonder if he'll listen when you speak, or if he'll look right through you like so many others do. Back in your chamber, you're too restless to sleep. Your ladies help you undress, of course, brushing your hair once again, folding your garments into lavender-scented chests. But once they leave, you sit by the window, cloaked in a soft wool shawl, your feet curled beneath you on the bench. Outside, the stars are bright. The village beyond the walls is silent now, its windows dark. You wonder what it's like to sleep without obligation, to fall into bed without first performing a dozen rituals, to dream without the burden of diplomacy. The wind rustles the ivy on the outer walls, and somewhere below, an owl calls once, then again. You close your eyes, imagining a different life, a simpler one, a kitchen maid maybe, or the daughter of a blacksmith. You'd wake up to the smell of ash and iron, your hands calloused, your body tired for real reasons. You'd have no title, but maybe you'd have laughter, a freedom to speak what you mean, a freedom to love someone of your choosing. But then there'd be no velvet either, no delicate fruit from distant lands, no golden combs or embroidered sleeves. It's a trade you're not allowed to make, but still you weigh it in your mind. Eventually, your body insists on rest. You slide beneath the heavy coverlet, turning onto your side, staring at the embroidered canopy above your bed. Even here, even in stillness, you must hold shape. You are a princess. Your thoughts may stray, but your spine must stay straight, even in sleep. Morning returns all too soon. The next day begins with a surprise, a falconry display. You're invited to attend along with several young nobles and visiting dignitaries. It's meant to be a distraction, a form of courtly amusement, and also a chance to mingle, observe, be observed. You dress in a riding gown thicker and more practical, though still exquisite in its detail. A cape is draped over your shoulders to protect you from the wind, and your gloves are laced tight at the wrist. When you step out into the courtyard, the sunlight is crisp and bright, casting sharp shadows across the gravel. The falconers are already setting up hooded birds perched on thick leather gloves, wings occasionally flapping with restrained force. The master of falconry greets you with a respectful bow and introduces the birds by name. One of the younger handlers stands near the back holding a peregrine falcon. He looks up briefly as you pass, then quickly lowers his gaze. You recognize him. He was watching from the garden arch the day before. The demonstration begins. The birds take flight, swooping in graceful arcs, returning to the gauntleted fists of their handlers. The guests applaud, the ladies gasp. The young lords offer commentary with performative bravado. You smile when required, nod when expected, and keep your hands folded tightly in your lap. But your eyes follow the peregrine. She moves differently, sharper, swifter, more controlled. The handler who holds her never smiles, never speaks, but his focus is total. When the bird lands on his glove, he rewards her with a sliver of raw meat and a quiet word you cannot hear. Later, as the guests disperse and the courtyard empties, you linger for a moment near the edge. The young handler is collecting leashes and hoods. You could speak to him, ask about the bird, comment on her flight. But you don't. You nod once as you pass, and he bows without a word. That night, as you soak your feet in lavender water, and your maid braids your hair into its nighttime pattern, you find yourself thinking not of the prince but of that silent falconer, of the way his hand never trembled, of the way the bird returned to him every time. You wonder what it feels like to be chosen. The next morning begins with the sound of bells, soft and distant, drifting in from the chapel tower. You're already awake, staring at the ceiling, as the last wisps of dream fade from your mind. You remember nothing of it, only that it had been quiet, and in it, you had been somewhere else. Somewhere you weren't watched. The maid enters, as always, bearing the basin of warmed water, her footsteps hushed. She doesn't speak at first, knowing by now the slow rhythm of your waking hours. You rise and begin the process, washing, brushing, dressing, while the rest of the castle stirs to life outside your window. Today's schedule is unusually full. You'll be reviewing poetry with your tutor, attending a council luncheon with your mother, and assisting in preparations for a visiting nobleman's arrival. That's all before Vespers. As your dress is fastened light green with cream lacing, you steal a glance at your reflection. You look composed, regal, as expected. You wonder when you last looked at yourself without trying to appear a certain way. You wonder what your face would do if no one were around to judge it. Your tutor arrives promptly, as he always does. A tall, thin man with a narrow mouth and eyes that never seem to blink enough. He brings with him a leather-bound collection of poems, some romantic, some religious, others philosophical. You sit by the arched window in the study and begin reciting aloud, your voice soft and measured. The poem he selects today is about longing, about a knight who sees a lady in a vision and searches the world for her only to learn she was a symbol of divine truth. You read it carefully, but you can't help think how convenient it is for the lady to remain imaginary. She never has to answer, never has to marry anyone she doesn't know. Your tutor commends your reading and assigns a short composition, a few lines in your own words on the meaning of virtue. You write it neatly in Latin, your fingers aching by the end, though you know he'll offer little praise. Praise, like freedom, is rationed here. After the lesson, you walk with your mother to the council luncheon. She glides through the corridor with a pace that is neither hurried nor slow, just fast enough to remind everyone she's never late. Her ladies follow like a river behind her, and you match her stride exactly. The luncheon is held in a private solar with carved wooden panels and windows that overlook the inner courtyard. At the table sit 3 lords from neighboring estates and your father's steward. They all rise when you and the queen enter, and you take your seat beside her, folding your hands in your lap as dishes are placed before you. The conversation is dry harvest predictions, land disputes, plans for repairing a damaged bridge in the north. You speak only when your mother prompts you, answering questions about court customs or upcoming ceremonies. One of the lords remarks on your poise, and your mother beams, as though it's a reflection of her own discipline. Perhaps it is. After the meal, the queen excuses herself to speak privately with the steward, and you are left to handle the social portion. This too is a lesson. You smile, you compliment, you engage without revealing. You ask about their families. You inquire about their journeys. You do not complain of your own schedule. You are serene, you are composed. You are what they came to see. When it is finally over, you return to your chamber and remove your gloves. Your fingertips are pink from the tight seams. You stretch your hands, then close them into gentle fists. One of your ladies brings in a new bundle of letters arrived just that morning. Most are addressed to your parents, but one is for you. The seal is unfamiliar. You open it slowly. It's from your cousin in the Western Court, the one with the unruly laugh and the wild ideas. She writes of a feast she attended where a juggler set his hat on fire and a merchant's wife danced with a minstrel. She writes of scandal and stories and laughter, and even love, though it's unclear if hers is requited. At the end, she asks how you are. You stare at the question for a long moment. How are you? You set the letter down and press your hands into your lap. You can't answer her. Not truthfully. Not in ink. There's no time to dwell. The steward arrives soon after, announcing that the nobleman from the east will arrive before dusk. You're to help greet him alongside your parents. A new gown is fetched, a burgundy velvet with gold brocade, heavy and formal, fitted with a trained skirt that makes quick movement impossible. As you're dressed, you learn his name, Lord Henri of Belmarsh. Widowed, childless, with a fortune built on salt and sheep. He's not a suitor, thank the stars, but his goodwill is valuable, and so you must charm him. The greeting takes place in the inner courtyard. Your father stands beside you, regal and commanding, while your mother remains seated beneath a canopy. You curtsy deeply as the lord dismounts. He's older than expected, with a broad mustache and a voice like crushed gravel. He praises your family, compliments the castle bows with practiced grandeur. You walk with him briefly after the formal greeting, accompanied by your ladies, discussing the view from the towers and the beauty of the spring blossoms. He asks if you play the lute. You nod and smile, though you haven't practiced in weeks. Later, as the sky darkens and the torches are lit, you slip away for evening prayers. The chapel is quiet, nearly empty. You kneel alone this time and close your eyes. You do not pray for the prince, or for wisdom, or for anything lofty. You whisper one small request into the silence. Let me be seen for who I am. Not the crown, not the dress, not the daughter or the prize, just me. But the stone walls do not answer. They never do. The following day brings a rare shift in rhythm. The court has declared a quiet day, a time of reflection and rest in honor of a distant saint's feast, whose name no one remembers, but whose observance remains carved into the calendar like a scar. There will be no banquets, no hunts, no visiting nobles to charm. The castle will slow its usual frenzy to a near hush, though never truly silent. You awaken slightly later than usual, the sky outside your window already tinged with gold. A warm breeze carries the scent of dew-soaked earth and the faint smoke of the morning hearths. You stretch, savoring the brief illusion of choice. A quiet day still comes with expectations, but the pressure lessens. You may for a few hours walk without an audience. Your ladies dress you in a simple gown, soft cream wool with a faded blue sash. No jewels, no headpiece, just a modest braid and a clean collar. It's strange to feel so light, so free of fabric and formality. You take breakfast alone in your chamber, warm bread, a boiled egg, and a goblet of watered wine while reading another letter from your cousin. This one is shorter, but it includes a poem scribbled in the margins. A verse about waiting for spring while the snow refuses to melt. You read it twice. With no formal lessons scheduled, you ask to visit the library. It's not forbidden, but it's not encouraged either. Girls of your station are not expected to crave time among the shelves. Still, your request is granted. Perhaps your mother considers it harmless on a quiet day. Or perhaps she knows it will soothe something restless in you. The library is cool and dim, built of gray stone and thick with the scent of parchment and dust. A monk barely older than you tends to the scrolls and volumes. He bows slightly and vanishes into the back, granting you rare solitude. You walk slowly along the shelves, fingers hovering near the spines. Some are prayer books, others historical records, a few romances, and even a treatise on natural philosophy, written in Latin, of course, and likely meant only for the men of court. Still, you slide it off the shelf and bring it to a reading desk near the window. You spend the next hour in quiet absorption, losing yourself in the elegant, rigid logic of the scholar's words. He writes about stars and spheres, about wind and water, about things that seem far removed from your life. But somehow, reading them, you feel closer to yourself. No one is watching you in here. No one is correcting your posture or inspecting your hands. It's just you and the quiet turning of pages. Eventually, a maid arrives to remind you gently that your presence is requested by the queen. The moment evaporates. You mark your place with a ribbon and leave the book on the desk, promising yourself you'll return soon. Your mother has chosen the solar for today's discussion, and when you enter, you can sense the shift immediately. This is not casual. A chair is already prepared for you beside her, and a tray of sugared almonds sits untouched on the nearby table. A servant stands near the door with a scroll in his hands. As you sit, your mother explains the preparations for the prince's visit are accelerating. The schedule is being finalized. The steward has arranged for a midday hunt followed by an evening masque. You, of course, will take part in both. She gestures for the servant to read the proposed itinerary aloud. As he drones on, listing events, meals, prayers, dances, you feel your hands clench in your lap. It's not that any of it is surprising. It's the certainty of it all. The inevitability. The prince arrives in less than 10 days. After the servant is dismissed, your mother turns to you. Her tone softens. She says she knows this isn't easy, that she remembers her own first betrothal, the pressure, the pageantry, the sense of being paraded like a relic. But she says something else too. Something quieter. There is power in playing the role well, she says, looking not at you, but out the window. And sometimes, there is safety. You nod, unsure whether she means to comfort or to warn. Later, you walk the perimeter of the castle alone, save for a single guard who keeps his distance. You pass under archways hung with vines past the armory and the empty training yard, where wooden swords clatter occasionally from the wind, knocking them against racks. You stop near the Falcon Mews. The same young handler is there bent over a perch, adjusting a jess on the leg of a hawk. He notices you, stands and bows. This time you speak. "What is her name?" you ask, pointing to the hawk. "Ira," he says, his voice low and steady. "She's difficult, but loyal." You step closer. The bird tilts her head and eyes you, feathers puffed slightly with curiosity. "She's beautiful," you say. "Strong." The handler nods. "She doesn't like cages," he adds without looking at you. You both fall silent. The wind rustles through the trees above. He doesn't speak again, but he doesn't walk away either. You stand there for a moment longer than propriety allows, then nod once and turn back toward the castle. That night, you light a candle yourself, something your maids usually do. You place it on the windowsill and sit beside it in the dark, watching the tiny flame dance. You wonder if Era is awake. You wonder if the prince would understand that sometimes the strongest wings belong to those who refuse to be still. The candle burns low on the sill by morning, its wax puddled across the stone ledge like the remnants of a forgotten promise. You're already awake before the maid enters your thoughts, having stirred you from sleep well before dawn. There's no dream you remember, only a lingering feeling of being watched, as if your mind refused to let go of the castle's unblinking eyes, even in slumber. Today begins with a visit from the master of ceremonies, a stout, fastidious man, whose robes always smell faintly of ink and sandalwood. He arrives bearing lists and schedules and expectations like weapons in scroll form. The prince's arrival is now precisely 8 days away, and rehearsals must begin. Not rehearsals for performance, but for presence. For walking beside him, sitting beside him, rising with him. When to smile, when to look down, when to let the world believe something that may not yet be true. You sit in the great hall as he outlines each movement. Your handmaids play the roles of courtiers and nobles, bowing and gesturing with exaggerated courtesy. You respond with measured grace, even as your stomach churns. At one point, you are instructed to practice greeting the prince with a soft curtsy, followed by a polite incline of the head, and no words unless spoken to. You do it once, twice, then a third time, your mouth dry. When it's finally over, you feel as though you've lived an entire day already, and it's not yet noon. You excuse yourself briefly to the chapel. Not for prayer, though, that's the pretense, but simply for quiet. You slip into the back pew and sit alone, letting the sunlight spill through the stained glass in reds and blues across your lap. You close your eyes. You remember a moment from years ago when you were still small enough to be carried. Your father had lifted you into his arms after a winter banquet, your head resting on his shoulder. You had asked him if princesses ever got to do whatever they wanted. He'd laughed gently, kissed your forehead, and said, "Only the clever ones, my sweet." It had sounded like a fairy tale then. Now you're not sure if it was a warning. Your moment of stillness is interrupted by a gentle voice. One of the chapel caretakers has come to light the altar candles. You rise quietly, thank him with a small nod, and return to your chamber. Waiting for you is a seamstress with an armful of fabric. She curtsies and begins laying out swatches on your bed, deep crimson twilight blue, frost-white silk. For the mask, she says, her fingers dancing lightly over the cloth. The queen requests that you wear something unforgettable. You are to be the central figure in the evening's procession, the star around which the court will turn. The mask is meant to charm the prince, to impress the visiting dignitaries, to dazzle and delight, and you are the crown jewel of the spectacle. You select the twilight blue. It reminds you of the sky just before darkness falls, completely mysterious, cool, almost free. The seamstress begins her measurements, muttering about hem lengths and sleeve drape. You stand still as pins are placed, and removed as bodice pieces are adjusted against your frame. It is in its own way another kind of rehearsal, another costume for another scene. When she finally departs, your afternoon is given over to embroidery, not for leisure, but as an expected display of refinement. You sit by the window with your hoop in hand, threading silken vines around the edge of a handkerchief meant to be gifted to the prince on his arrival. It is symbolic. Everything is symbolic. Your stitches are precise but slow. Your thoughts are elsewhere. You wonder again if he is as nervous as you, or if he is already certain of his role, already accustomed to the performance, already waiting to claim the bride promised to him in ink and wax, long before either of you had voices to object. A soft knock at the door. It's your younger sister, barely 12, and already graceful in that timid, unformed way of noble children. She enters shyly, asking if she might sit with you. You nod, and she climbs onto the cushioned bench beside you, watching your needle rise and fall. After a while, she speaks. Do you think it's scary to be married? You pause. Yes, you say quietly. Sometimes. But sometimes it can be kind, too. She considers that, swinging her feet beneath the bench. Do you love him yet? She asks, without malice, without agenda. Just curiosity. You smile faintly, not looking up from your thread. I haven't met him yet. She frowns. That's strange. You nod. It is. The moment lingers, fragile and real. Then a servant arrives, announcing that the dance master is waiting in the upper hall. Your sister slips away, and you rise once more. The dance rehearsal is long and exhausting. You're taught the steps of the stately pavane, a slow processional dance meant to display dignity and coordination rather than joy. Your partner is a young courtier assigned to play the role of the prince, a kind boy, careful not to step on your toes, though his hands tremble slightly every time they brush yours. The court musicians play the melody over and over. You step forward, slide to the side, turn gently, curtsy. Again, again, again. By the end, your feet ache and your smile is a ghost of itself. But the dance master claps his hands and says, "Perfect. Just like a queen." You nod, though your body feels hollow. That night, you eat alone in your chamber. A simple supper broth bread, a poached pear. You chew slowly, watching the firelight flicker across the walls. You do not cry. You do not sigh. You simply sit there, watching the last sliver of the pear disappear from your plate, and feel the weight of the days still ahead pressing down like a second spine. Outside, the moon is high, and the castle dreams while you cannot. Morning returns, as it always does, with soft footsteps, whispered greetings, and the quiet rustle of fabric being laid out beside your bed. You wake to the same pale light and the same scent of dried lavender tucked into your pillow. But today, something feels different. The air is heavier, not with weather, but with anticipation. The prince is only a week away now. Every servant knows it. Every glance in the corridor, every extra sweep of dust from a windowsill, every polishing of a brass candelabra, it's all part of the great invisible preparation. The castle itself seems to be holding its breath. You sit up and stretch the weight of the past few days, pulling faintly at your shoulders. You've worn so many dresses, spoken so many carefully chosen words, danced steps that felt like rituals. But still, this morning, you rise again, place your feet in the slippers laid out for you, and let the day begin. Your breakfast is taken not in your chamber, but in the Queen's private dining room. An intimate gathering, just you, your mother, and a trusted aunt visiting from the capital. The food is light, soft cheese, honeyed fruit, and thin slices of rye bread. Tea is poured, and the conversation begins, as it always does, circling around the weather, the latest court gossip, and the health of distant relatives. But then the topic shifts. Your mother asks if you've considered what you'll say when you first meet the prince. Your aunt chimes in, suggesting a comment about his journey, perhaps a compliment on his court's generosity. They toss ideas across the table like cards in a game. You sip your tea and nod politely, offering small suggestions of your own, though inside your mind wanders. You wonder what he'll actually be like. Will he be older than expected? Bored proud? Will he make eye contact when he speaks? Or will he address your father and ignore you entirely, as many men do? Will he truly see you, or will you be just another pawn to him wrapped in silk and expectations? After breakfast, you are summoned to the gallery to meet with the court artist. He has finished the painting from last week's sitting. It is to be unveiled before the court tonight, and you are to preview it first. A courtesy. You enter the long stone gallery and see the painting draped in a linen sheet propped up against a tapestry. The artist stands nearby, nervous and proud. He pulls the cloth aside with a flourish. And there you are, frozen in pigment. Eyes softened, lips curved, faintly, posture serene. You look like someone from a dream, more porcelain than person. The light falls gently across your shoulders, and your hands rest perfectly still in your lap. It's beautiful. But it isn't you. You step closer, staring at the face, trying to find yourself inside it. The eyes are too calm, the mouth too closed. The version of you in that painting has never wanted to run barefoot through a forest, or wondered what a thunderstorm feels like from outside the palace walls. Still, you nod. You thank him. You tell him it's exquisite, because that's what's expected. Later in the garden, you're joined by your music tutor. You're to rehearse a short performance piece, a gentle melody on the harp, to be played the evening the prince arrives. The song is sweet, mournful, delicate. You sit on the carved bench beneath the arbor fingers resting on the strings. You play it slowly, carefully, each note falling into place like a droplet of water. Your tutor nods approvingly, but you're only half listening. Your thoughts drift again to the falconer. You haven't seen him in 2 days. You don't know his name. And yet the memory of his steady hands and quiet presence lingers like smoke. You finish the piece and stand brushing stray petals from your sleeves. Your tutor praises your skill. You smile and curtsy. Another duty fulfilled. In the afternoon, you attend the Queen as she receives a group of noblewomen from a nearby court. You're seated beside her, adorned in pale lilac and pearls, your hair twisted into an intricate braid. The conversation is light and pointed. Each phrase wrapped in silken tones, each compliment sharpened with subtext. You participate when prompted, laugh softly when expected, and offer just enough charm to appear engaged. But your eyes stray to the window more than once. That evening, the painting is unveiled during a gathering in the main hall. Candles are lit, musicians play softly, and courtiers murmur their admiration as they crowd around the portrait. Your father praises the artist loudly. Your mother takes your hand and lifts it gently as if offering you up. You stand beside the painting for what feels like hours, smiling as people compliment your likeness. You thank them always with grace, always with the same careful tone. After the guests begin to filter out, your mother turns to you and says softly, "You've never looked more perfect." You don't reply. Later, back in your chamber, the candles have burned low, and the fire has dimmed to quiet embers. You remove the pearl necklace yourself, unpin your own braid, and stare at the glowing coals. You wonder what the prince will think when he meets you. Not the painting, not the princess. You, if he'll ever meet her at all. You don't sleep much that night. The castle groans and shifts around you, its ancient stones murmuring in the wind, as if whispering secrets too old for words. You lie awake beneath your heavy coverlet, staring at the wooden canopy above your bed, listening to the faint crackle of the hearth. The quiet feels deeper than usual. Not peaceful, just wide and echoing. When the maid enters at dawn, you're already sitting upright, wrapped in a shawl. She startles slightly, then quickly bows and asks whether you'd prefer to rest longer. You shake your head. Today is too full, too close. The prince will arrive in 5 days. You begin with a bath scented with elderflower, this time a subtle attempt at lifting your spirits. You soak in the warmth, eyes half closed, letting your mind drift. The water is soft, the silence soothing, but you know it's not a true rest. There's always the next moment waiting, always someone knocking just outside the door. When you're dressed, the gown is simpler than usual, dusky rose with fitted sleeves and minimal trim. Today's focus is the mask preparations, and the seamstresses will need access to your arms and waist for final adjustments. You're not expected to dazzle yet, not until the night of the performance. After a small breakfast of sweet oats and spiced milk, you're brought to the great hall, which is in full transformation. The banners are being swapped for seasonal colors. Carpenters and servants bustle about arranging stages, assembling painted backdrops, and testing candelabra heights. The scent of beeswax, sawdust, and rose oil mingles strangely in the air. You're guided to the costuming area where bolts of fabric lie draped across benches. The masked director greets you with a short, dramatic bow. He is flamboyant and brisk, draped in an inky black cloak trimmed with fox fur, always a bit much, but the castle tolerates him for his talent and his ability to turn aristocrats into fairy tale creatures for an evening. Your role, he informs you, is the evening star. It is symbolic. Of course it is. You'll wear the twilight blue gown you selected, now fitted with a sheer overlay dusted in crystal beads meant to glimmer like starlight. A tiara is being forged, silver branches set with tiny moonstones. He gestures toward a pedestal bearing the half-finished piece. It catches the light beautifully, and yet it feels heavier just to look at it. You smile, politely nod when needed, raise your arms when the seamstresses tug and pin and mark. One whispers to another that the prince is rumored to be taller than expected. You don't ask who said it. It doesn't matter. After the fitting, you rehearse your entrance. It will happen near the end of the mask. The court will be watching. The prince will be seated beside your father, and at the precise moment when the music shifts into its final refrain, you will glide down the central stairway, flanked by 2 torchbearers. The doors will open. Everyone will rise. You will pause beneath the archway, haloed in light, and bow. You practice the steps a dozen times. Your shoes are stiff. Your ankles ache. But your movements are smooth, timed, perfect. Later that afternoon, you visit the infirmary wing. It's not scheduled, but you ask to go, and the request is granted. There's an old nurse you've known since childhood, a woman with sharp eyes and soft hands who once told you stories about sea witches and wandering kings while cleaning your scraped knees. She's not unwell, just tired, her joints swollen with age and her voice quieter than it used to be. You sit with her for a while. She doesn't ask about the prince. She doesn't ask about the mask. She simply places a hand over yours and says, "You're doing fine." You don't realize how much you needed to hear that until the silence after. When you return to your chamber, the day is fading, the light beginning to slant gold across the walls. You take a moment to write. Not an official letter, just a page in your private book hidden beneath the lowest drawer in your wardrobe. You write about the mask, about the weight of the crystal beads, about your fear of slipping on the stairs. You write about the falconer, about his silence, his steadiness, the way he never once asked anything of you. And then you stop. You tear the page out. You feed it to the fire. As the flames curl the paper and eat your thoughts, you stand and watch until nothing remains but ash and silence. That night you dine in the smaller family hall with your parents. Your father seems in good spirits, discussing the prince's favorite hunting dogs and the pedigree of a particularly well-bred hawk being gifted to him upon arrival. Your mother smiles often, but speaks little. At one point, your father says, "He'll be lucky, you know, to have a bride like you." You nod. You smile. You thank him. But inside, you wonder what lucky really means. Does it mean obedient, lovely, untroubled? Or does it mean silent? Later in bed, you try to remember the last night you fell asleep without bracing yourself for tomorrow. You cannot. So instead, you lie awake listening to the wind against the towers, counting the days left. Only 4 now. And then the performance begins in earnest. You wake to the sound of horses. Not the soft clop of hooves on distant stone, but the sharper, closer sound of animals being prepared, brushed, saddled, guided into place. Outside your chamber window, the courtyard is alive with motion. It's the hunting party being assembled for today's outing. You're not expected to ride, princesses rarely do unless it's for spectacle, but you'll be present at the send-off and later at the feast. Your maid informs you that the prince's vanguard has been spotted on the old road. His personal retinue will arrive tomorrow, but his guards and outriders are already filtering into the outer keep. The castle hums with this news. Every breath of conversation, every hasty adjustment to a garland or a polished banister is a sign that the center of the world is shifting just slightly closer. You dress in a deep forest green gown embroidered with gold thread in the shape of climbing vines. A cloak is fastened at your shoulders with a bronze brooch in the shape of a stag, symbolic again. You're not just a spectator, you're part of the stage. The courtyard is crisp with early spring air. You step out beneath the archway where your father stands, already speaking with the huntmaster. Several nobles mill nearby, adjusting gloves, chatting about trail conditions, laughing too loudly. You offer the proper nods, the practiced smiles, always poised, always serene. Your mother joins you just before the horns sound. She's dressed in steel gray velvet, her eyes sharp and unreadable. "You'll sit with me during the banquet later," she says. "He'll expect to see you at the head of the table, even if he hasn't yet arrived." You nod. You've already accepted that this will be the rhythm from now on, appearances on appearances. The hunt departs in a flurry of fur and banners. The prince, of course, is not among them. This is merely the tradition that precedes his entrance. A prelude. A symbolic chase to echo his impending pursuit of a bride. You watch as the horses vanish into the trees, and then you're led back inside to begin preparing for the evening. The castle is a swirl of activity. Cooks chop and stir and shout over bubbling pots. Musicians rehearse in the side halls, their melodies echoing faintly beneath the arched ceilings. A seamstress arrives to review your wardrobe for the banquet. Even your shoes are considered white satin, with gilded trim embroidered with your family's crest. You will wear them only once. Then they'll be boxed and stored, a relic of a moment you didn't ask for, but must inhabit fully. As the sun begins to sink, you sit before your mirror. Your maid brushes your hair, coiling it into an intricate braided crown. A few loose curls are pinned deliberately to frame your face, soft yet precise. Kohl is pressed lightly to your eyes. Rose tint to your lips. Pearls for your ears. You do not recognize the girl staring back at you. She's beautiful, but she looks like someone drawn in ink, neat, contained, finished. In the hall, the banquet has already begun when you arrive. You're announced by title. The room rises. You move slowly to the high table, each step a calculation. You feel your gown sweep behind you, hear the subtle swish of silk against stone. You do not look down. You do not falter. The prince's seat sits empty beside your father. Still you smile. You sit. You sip from a silver goblet filled with sweetened wine. You listen as your father makes a toast in the prince's honor. And when all eyes turn toward you, you incline your head gracefully. The conversation at the table floats over and around you, grain prices, family lineages, the condition of the southern roads. You contribute with short, gentle replies. Your hands stay folded in your lap when you're not eating. You chew delicately. You laugh only when it's safe. Halfway through the meal, a minor noble from the borderlands asks you what quality you most admire in a man. You blink startled for just a moment, and then say, kindness. It's a simple answer, but silence follows. Then your father chuckles. Kindness, he repeats. A fine virtue, and a rare one. There is laughter, and the moment passes. But you catch your mother's glance across the table. A flicker of something, concern, perhaps, or curiosity, or a warning. After the feast, you are not allowed to return directly to your chamber. There is one more event scheduled, a private rehearsal for the final scene of the masque. The torchbearers are summoned. The musicians wait with lowered instruments. The director is already flushed and impatient when you arrive. Your gown is draped over a screen in the corner. You're not required to wear it tonight, just to walk the path, practice the steps. The archway is dark at first, and then the doors are thrown open, flooding the staircase with golden torchlight. You descend. Slowly. One hand on the rail, the other at your side. You pause at the center landing. Turn glide forward. Applause breaks the silence, polite and brief. There are only a few people present, but they clap anyway because they are meant to. Lovely, the director says, clasping his hands. Again. And so you do it again. And again. Each time you feel more like a shadow moving through light. A figure carved out of ritual. By the end, your feet throb. Your back aches. But you smile because smiling is what holds the illusion together. When you're finally released, you walk back to your chamber beneath a velvet sky. The stars shimmer above the towers. The moon hangs low, pale and thin. As you climb into bed, your maid hesitates before extinguishing the last candle. "Do you feel ready, my lady?" she asks quietly. You pause, then nod. But inside you feel like something fragile, wrapped in too much silk, beautiful, breakable, and already bending. You don't dream that night, or if you do, the dreams vanish too quickly to remember. Instead, you wake to a feeling, a presence, as though the castle itself has tilted slightly, leaning toward something new. The prince arrives today. Even before the first bell chimes, the halls are alive. Servants dart past your chamber carrying fresh-cut flowers, velvet cushions, and ornate silverware. Everything must shimmer. Everything must breathe royalty. Your maid enters earlier than usual. The queen says you'll break your fast in the receiving hall, she whispers. Only a small meal, just enough to settle your nerves. You smile faintly. You're not sure your nerves will settle. You're dressed in sky blue silk, a color chosen to match your family's crest, and the clear weather outside. The bodice is trimmed with white lace, and a sash of soft silver wraps around your waist. Your hair is coiled again into its most graceful shape, fastened with pearl pins. The circlet rests lightly on your brow, just enough to gleam, never enough to overshadow. You're led through the castle by 2 attendants past guards, who bow past chambermaids, who freeze mid-step just to stay out of your path. In the receiving hall, your parents are already seated on the raised dais. Your father wears his formal cloak, the one with the lion-embroidered hem. Your mother's gown glistens with black jet beads, her expression unreadable, regal. You take your place beside her and wait. The hall fills slowly. Courtiers in their finest robes, knights in polished armor, stewards, pages, musicians, and falconers, too, standing quietly along the back wall, their presence requested for show. You see him before you hear him. The prince enters without fanfare. His stride is measured, flanked by 2 guards bearing his house's banner, an eagle with silver wings on a field of crimson. His cloak billows softly behind him. He is younger than you expected. Clean-shaven, composed, not cruel-looking, not especially kind either. His eyes are sharp, calculating, the eyes of someone used to power, not charmed by it. He bows before your father and speaks in a low, practiced tone, greetings, formalities, pleasantries. Then he turns to you. You rise. You curtsy. You lift your gaze and meet his eyes. He smiles, just slightly. The room falls quiet. You are introduced, your titles spoken aloud, as though they're sacred words carved into a temple. He nods. Then, unexpectedly, he says, I've heard much of your poise, and your voice, you blink. I hope the stories were kind, you reply softly. He smiles again, unrealistically so. There is a beat of pause, then laughter from the courtiers. Light, obliging. Your mother's hand brushes yours beneath the table in acknowledgement, a warning, a reward. You're not sure. After the reception, you are ushered together for a walk in the garden, a brief and heavily supervised moment of courtly companionship. 2 ladies follow at a distance along with a steward, but for the first time you are beside him, alone enough to speak freely. He remarks on the roses, asks if you enjoy reading, inquires about your favorite composer. It all sounds natural, well rehearsed, but not cruel. He listens more than you expect. Still, every word you offer is weighed, every reply shaped like glass. You tell him that you enjoy stories with melancholy endings, that you prefer storms to sunshine, that you sometimes play the harp, though not well. He laughs gently. You're honest. No, you reply. Just tired of pretending I'm not. He looks at you, really looks, and then he nods. The walk ends with a flourish of ritual. The steward clears his throat. The ladies close in. And just like that, the moment vanishes into duty once more. The afternoon is taken up with feasting. Long tables overflowing with fruit, roasted meat, carved loaves, and sculpted sugar. Goblets refilled toasts, recited minstrels weaving melodies through every pause. You sit beside the prince, close but not touching. When he leans toward you during a song, you feel your breath catch. He asks if you like the music. You nod because you do. Because you've spent your whole life listening without ever really being heard. After the meal, you return to your chamber in a blur of motion and music. The tiara for the mask has arrived delivered in a velvet-lined box. You lift it gently. Silver branches, moonstones, cool and sharp in your hands. There's a note tucked inside. Not from the prince, from your cousin. It reads, "Remember who you were before they told you who to be." No signature. Just that single sentence scribbled in ink that's slightly smudged. You fold it and hide it in the hollow behind your mirror. That evening, the final preparations for the mask take place. Your gown is laid out. Your slippers shined. Your cloak brushed and trimmed. As the castle prepares to watch you shine, you stand in the center of your room alone. You breathe in, you breathe out. And you whisper not to anyone in particular. Let them see me, not just the mask. Then you turn to the door. It's time. The mask begins with fanfare horns echoing through the vaulted halls, tapestries fluttering in the wake of hurried steps, and candles lit in every sconce until the entire castle glows. The air smells of jasmine and spiced clove, perfumed and heavy with expectation. Laughter carries from the ballroom, though none of it feels careless. Even joy here must follow form. You are not present at the opening. That's part of the mystique. While the guests gather below nobles in gleaming silks, dignitaries wearing feathered masks, and dancers with ribbons streaming from their sleeves. You wait behind a set of tall wooden doors at the top of the grand staircase. 2 torchbearers stand on either side of you, each holding a long ceremonial brand. The heat from the flames licks at your cheeks, but you remain still. Your gown sparkles with every breath. The twilight blue silk flows like water around you, layered with the sheer beaded veil that drapes from your shoulders and trails like a comet's tail behind you. The tiara rests lightly on your brow, cool silver pressed against your skin, anchoring you like a crown made of winter. Music floats upward from the ballroom, a soft, slow waltz in a minor key. Then it changes. A single flute note, high and clear, pierces the hum of the evening. It's the signal. The doors open. You don't move at first. You let the pause settle. Let the gathered crowd below draw in its collective breath. Then, with a grace honed over years of practice and pressure, you begin your descent. Each step is slow gliding, controlled. The torchbearers move in perfect synchrony. The veil sways behind you like mist, and the crystals stitched into your sleeves catch the firelight with every measured movement. The crowd parts below. Every head turns. Every conversation halts. At the foot of the stairs, the prince stands waiting. He wears deep red, trimmed in silver, a ceremonial sash across his chest. His mask is simple white with a single black line traced across the cheek, but even with it, you see his gaze. Steady, assessing, curious. You reach the bottom and stop before him. You curtsy, not too low, not too bold, just enough. He offers his hand. You place yours in his, and together you step into the first dance. It begins with a circle, your arms raised, and light your movements airy. Then a turn, a pause, a pivot. His steps are sure, but he follows your rhythm. You lead without showing it. The crowd watches. Murmurs ripple like wind through tall grass. But in the center, it is just the two of you orbiting each other like sun and moon. As the music swells, he leans in slightly and whispers, "Do you enjoy this?" You answer, without hesitation. "Only if I forget they're watching." He chuckles. "Then let's forget them." You spin again, his hand lightly guiding your waist, and for a few breaths, it almost feels real, not rehearsed, not required, but chosen. Shared. When the dance ends, applause rains around you like soft petals. The prince bows. You nod in return. And then, just as planned, you vanish into the crowd, leaving behind the shimmer of your passage and the echo of your movement. The masque continues with performances, games, and poetic recitations. You drift through it like a figure in a dream, dancing with visiting lords, exchanging pleasantries with duchesses, posing for courtiers who will later write letters about your elegance. You smile so much that your cheeks ache. Your feet throb in your slippers. Your back burns from posture held too long. But your face never breaks. Eventually, you step into a side hall for a moment of stillness. You press your fingers to the stone wall, cool against your skin, and exhale. Princess. You turn. The falconer stands at the far end of the corridor, just beyond the torchlight. No mask, no title, just him. You blink. You shouldn't be here. I know. You don't move. Neither does he. Then he adds, "But I wanted to see you, not just the version of you they made." You step closer slowly. Your skirts whisper along the stone. "How do you know the difference?" you ask. He smiles faintly. "Because you looked happier with the hawk than you do with the crown." You're silent. The torch flickers. Then, "What do you think I should do?" He tilts his head. "Whatever you want." You laugh soft and hollow. Want doesn't exist here. His eyes darken with sympathy. But he says nothing else. Just bows deeper than he ever has before and disappears into the shadows. You stand there a moment longer, heart pounding, not from the dance, not from the prince, but from the echo of something you never thought you'd hear, a choice. When you return to the ballroom, your absence is noted only by your mother's glance. A glance that says you have a part to play. Don't forget it. The evening ends with another dance. The prince leads you again. His hand at your back is confident now, certain. You smile. But somewhere inside, something small and wild is stirring. Not rebellion, not yet. But the whisper of a voice you buried long ago asking, "What if there's more?" The mask is over, but its echoes linger long after the music fades. Even as you're undressed in your chamber, your beaded gown folded reverently, your tiara returned to its velvet box, you can still feel the rhythm of the waltz in your legs, the weight of the room's eyes on your skin. Your maid speaks in hushed tones, remarking how splendid the evening was, how gracefully the prince looked at you, how many whispered praises she overheard in the halls. You nod, smile faintly, and allow her to draw the pins from your hair one by one. But your thoughts aren't with the prince. They're in the corridor, in the shadowed hallway where someone spoke to you not as a princess, not as a future wife or daughter of power, but simply as a girl who once dreamed beyond castle walls. You sleep restlessly. Your dreams swirl with branches and birds and candlelit stairs that lead nowhere. By morning, the castle is already preparing for the next performance. Today is the hunt. You will not ride. That's been decided already, far too unseemly. But you'll attend the departure stand beside the prince, wear the polished boots and fur-lined cloak, and nod graciously as nobles mount their horses. You will wave. You will wait. You dress in russet wool today, with a fox-trimmed mantle and gloves so finely stitched they feel like second skin. The wind outside is crisp, and the smell of damp earth clings to the garden paths. The sun breaks low across the sky like melted gold. The hunting party assembles in the courtyard. You're placed beside the prince, who greets you with a cordial smile. He offers you his arm, formality always, and you rest your hand lightly atop it as the hounds bark and paw the gravel. Lords in crimson and charcoal-colored tunics adjust their saddles. Trumpets are raised. As the horn sounds and the riders take off, a cheer echoes behind them. You release the prince's arm and step back. "Will you ride?" you ask him. He shakes his head. "No. I've done enough chasing for 1 week." You smile at the wordplay, but your mind remains distant. Once the party is gone, the prince turns to you. "Would you walk with me?" You hesitate, but then you nod. The two of you stroll through the orchard just beyond the western wall, bare branches clawing at the pale sky, the ground littered with fallen leaves from last season. A pair of guards follow discreetly, always out of earshot. "I'm not here to trick you," the prince says after a time. "I know what this is. I know the role you've been handed." You look at him. His eyes are less sharp today, quieter. "I've learned to play the part," he adds, "but I don't enjoy it." That surprises you. You don't answer right away. He continues. "It's strange, being paraded through halls and told that someone is your future before you've even heard her laugh." You laugh softly now, just once, and he smiles. "But you do it anyway," you murmur. "Yes," he says, "because not doing it would cost others more than it would cost me." That strikes a chord. You nod slowly, looking away. The breeze tugs gently at your cloak. You both fall silent, walking beneath the naked trees, your breath forming small clouds in the morning air. Later in the chapel, you kneel beside your sister during midday prayers. Her head bowed, her hands folded, her veil slipping slightly over her brow. You glance sideways at her and wonder, when will her performance begin, and will anyone warn her before it does? That evening, the prince dines with your family in the solar. It is not a feast, just a quiet meal meant for conversation. He speaks more plainly now, his tone thoughtful, his gaze steady. He asks you about the castle's oldest tower, about the books you keep hidden beneath your mattress. You blink, startled. "How do you know that?" He grins. "You dropped a note from your cousin during the garden walk." "I may have glanced." You blush, then scowl. "That's private." "I know," he says. "I gave it to your maid untouched. But the handwriting, it looked freer than everything else around here. That's how I knew it mattered." The conversation softens after that. He speaks of his own mother, now long past, of his tutor who used to quote philosophers instead of scripture, of a dog he raised from a pup named Alder. You find yourself laughing once or twice, genuinely. After the meal, he stands and bows, not deeply but meaningfully. "May I see you tomorrow?" he asks. "Of course," you reply. And for the first time, you realize you mean it. You retreat to your chamber with thoughts tangled like embroidery thread. You think of the falconer. You think of your cousin's letter. You think of the prince, sincere, uncertain, wearing a title like armor. And for the first time since this all began, you wonder if maybe, just maybe, you could choose within the path laid before you. Not break free, not yet, but bend the script, shape it gently. As you drift towards sleep, you murmur into the darkness, "If I cannot leave the stage, then I will change the story." Dawn arrives quietly on the final day of the prince's visit. There is no fanfare, no trumpets, no thunder of hooves, just the soft scrape of hoarfrost melting on the windowsill and the low hum of voices beyond the walls, servants already whispering of goodbyes, of packed trunks of roads that will be muddy by afternoon. You wake slowly, blinking into the silver-gray morning light. It's warmer today, barely, and the birds in the trees beyond the tower are beginning to return small flutters of life you hadn't heard in weeks. For a moment, you lie still, just listening. You dress yourself, surprising your maid when she arrives to help. "I'll call you when I'm ready," you tell her gently, and she bows and withdraws. You choose your own gown today. Pale violet, soft velvet, the one that feels like dusk in fabric form. You fasten the sleeves, lace the bodice. You place no circlet on your brow, no necklace, no gloves. You want to be seen today as yourself, not the version they built. The prince waits for you in the inner garden. He's already dressed for travel, dark riding cloak, fur-lined boots, his sash rolled and tucked neatly into his belt. When he sees you approaching, he offers a real smile, not the rehearsed courtly kind. You wonder if it's the first time either of you has done that all week. "May I walk with you?" he asks. You nod, and the two of you begin slowly under the arches of climbing ivy and along gravel paths soft with moss. "I leave at noon," he says quietly. "There'll be a formal betrothal announcement soon after. A few weeks, no more. That's how these things go." You say nothing, but you feel his eyes glance toward you, waiting. "I meant what I said," he continues. "I know you didn't choose this. I didn't either. But we could make something of it." You stop walking. The air is still. He turns to face you. "You don't need to answer now," he adds quickly. "But I want you to know I'll never try to tame you." You look at him, carefully, deeply, and for the first time you don't see a prince. You see a man young, uncertain, a little tired of playing pretend. Like you. "You wouldn't succeed anyway, you say." He laughs. Relief floods his features. You laugh too. The moment settles. Not dramatic, not thunderous. Just simple and real. As noon approaches, the castle prepares for the farewell procession. You watch from the stone balcony as the prince mounts his horse, his retinue gathered behind him. He turns once, scans the wall, finds you in the crowd. You raise your hand, not a wave, just a quiet gesture, a promise, or at least a beginning. Then he's gone. The dust from his horse's hooves settles slowly into the cobblestones, and the courtyard stills once more. Back in your chamber, the maids begin folding away the gowns, brushing the embroidered cloaks, restoring the ornaments to their chests. But you leave the tiara where it sits untouched. You ask to visit the Falcon Muse. The master falconer is away today, but the young handler is there. He looks up as you enter. You don't speak. You simply stand beside him, watching the birds. Era is calm, her feathers sleek, her talons wrapped gently around the perch. "She hasn't flown since the mask," he says. "Neither have I," you reply softly. He looks at you then carefully, not expectantly. You nod once, then turn to leave. You don't need anything from him, not now, not anymore. But it meant something that he saw you, that someone did. Later at supper, your parents speak of alliances, trade agreements, wedding timetables. You listen. You answer when prompted. But your mind feels different, clearer, steadier. You are still within the role, but you've stepped into it on your own terms now. Before bed, you take one last walk through the upper corridor, the one with the tall windows and the soft breeze from the sea, the one where the air smells like salt and pine. You stand at the final arch, watching the sky burn itself into twilight, and you whisper aloud, "I will not be a story written for someone else." Now the castle sleeps. The corridors have emptied, the feast tables cleared, the candles burned to waxy stumps. Somewhere in the high tower, a night watchman hums to himself. In the kitchen, a pot of broth simmers slowly for morning. The falcons rest with their heads tucked under their wings, and the garden lies silent beneath the stars. You lie in your bed, the canopy above you painted with shadows. The tiara sits on your dresser. The gowns are folded in neat rows. The letters from your cousin are tied with string in the drawer beneath your combs. Everything is quiet now. Everything is still. You think of the prince's eyes, of the falconer's voice, of the poem in the margin, of the girl you were before the first corset was laced, before you learned to smile on command, before you were given a name meant to impress, not express. And slowly, gently, your breath evens. You made it. You danced the steps. You whispered truth through a mask. You were seen. And tomorrow, you will rise again, not just to perform, but to shape, to bend the story back toward yourself, even if just a little more each day. Because even princesses in the quiet between duties can still dream, and you are dreaming now of gardens without watchers, of laughter without rehearsal, of a life that is still yours even when it must be shared. So close your eyes. Let the castle fade. Let the candles go out. Let the stars stand watch.